Hi everybody, it's Holly. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit more about Aperture. I recently got asked how I get nice creamy backgrounds in my macro photos using my true macro lens and stopping down to say f8 or f10, and I still get that nice creamy compression. The person who asked me said that they still get a lot of texture in the background when they shoot with their macro lens, and I wanted to discuss that a little bit here. This is one of the areas I bring my grocery store flowers. This is just the side railing of our deck. You can see that in the evening, the golden hour light is filtered nicely through the trees, which gives me a lot of really pretty golden bokeh. But if you look at the tree line over there, I mean, that is feet. I mean, it's like really far away. So given that the background is so far away from my subject, that background is going to be a lot creamier. If my subject, which I'll demonstrate in a few minutes, will move closer to the trees, if my subject was closer to the tree line, then I'm going to get more texture in that background with the same aperture. Also to consider is how close you're shooting to your subject. So I'm going to shoot up really close at f8, and you're going to see how much more narrow that depth of field gets and how much less is in focus in the area, and in the background is going to be even creamier on that close-up photo than the one where I pull out and take a photo of the entire rose. But even with at f8, the background is so far away from the flower that when I get the photo of the entire rose, that background will be nice and creamy. So I'm going to demonstrate that right now. So for this one, I'm going to focus just like on the side of the flower right here. I'm going to focus up close. I know it's kind of hard to see. I wanted to get back far enough that you could see like a full pullback of where I'm shooting. So I'm going to, this is, my settings right now are ISO 800, 1/250th of a second, and f8. A good rule of thumb, also when choosing your settings, is to choose, I like to choose my aperture first. Whatever my focal point is and how large or small I want my focus area to be, I choose my aperture, kind of knowing the composition and how close I'm going to be shooting. And then I choose my shutter speed to make sure that I have a hand-holdable shutter speed. And then I choose an ISO that allows me to get a hand-holdable shutter speed, because I rarely shoot with a tripod. So aperture first, and then you can dial in your ISO to be enough to get you proper exposure with a hand-holdable shutter speed. So that's kind of how I approach that. So let's take a couple of shots. Okay, you can see about how far away I was from the flower. Now I'm going to back up. My barbecue grill is here, and I'm going to take a full flower shot. Okay, so now I took a photo a little bit further back, pulled back, with the entire flower is going to be more in focus, so I can get a lot. I did spray my flower down with my trusty water bottle before I started shooting, and that kind of with the bokeh coming through the trees, it just sparkles so really pretty. So I love using that technique. But yeah, so I will show you these photos. I'll edit these and I will pop them in the video so that you can see the difference. But now I'm going to head down the hill closer to the tree line and set my flower up on a TV tray, and we'll be closer to the tree line, and you can see the difference. I won't change any of my aperture. I won't change my aperture settings. We will be a little bit closer to the woods, so I'll probably have to bring up my ISO a little bit because it's darker and in the shade over there, but you'll see that we'll have more texture in the background, so stay with me. Okay, now we are right up against the tree line. I can see a little bit of the sun peeking through the trees, but now the sun has kind of gone down a little bit, and the trees are totally blocking it, so I'm not going to get as much of that pretty golden bokeh that I got shooting up there farther away from the trees. But I'm shooting right up against this area, and this kind of tree bush thing is pretty close to where my flower is. I'm still shooting at f8, and I'm gonna shoot the entire flower. I'm gonna put it right here so you can see it's pretty close. Like, this is where this tree is right behind. And I'm gonna shoot the whole flower. Oh, I am getting a little bit of that bokeh in there. Okay, and now I'm gonna get that same shot up close. The wind is blowing a little bit, so I had to wait for the flower to stop moving. But I will demonstrate, I'll show you in the photos after they're edited, the difference. And there's a lot more texture in the background because we're right up against the foliage. So this is a more extreme example than, say, if I was shooting from back here, but you're still gonna get a lot creamier bokeh in camera if you're further away from your background, or if you're shooting up close to your subject, than if you have a background with a lot of texture that's directly behind the flower that you are trying to photograph. Sometimes that can't be helped because you're shooting something that's on an actual plant or bush or something like that, and you don't want to pick that flower, or it might be in a patch of wildflowers on the ground and you're down there, so you can't always help that. But if you are working with your grocery store flowers, or you can find an angle where your background is further off in the distance so you can get that creamy bokeh, then that's how you do it. If you make sure that there's more separation between your subject and the background, or you can shoot up closer, like true macro, like really getting in on the details. Those are ways that you can make your background compression even more creamy, even when you have a higher aperture number. Other things to consider about your background that I'll say really quick. If you are shooting in harsh light, for example, and there's dappled light coming through the trees, that is gonna, even if it's creamy, it's gonna cause bright spots in the background of your photo, which might be distracting. So it's not always gonna look like the beautiful bokeh balls that we get that you'll see in these photos. If it's like midday or the sun is harsh, you could have distracting pockets of light, in your background. Also be aware of colors in your background. If you're shooting like in an urban environment and there's like flowers planted on the side of the road that you find pretty, and there might be a building in the background or a mural or something, those colors are going to be in your background. So you can either work with it, or that might be a distraction. Sometimes the flower might be a complementary color with something in the background and it works. Other times it might just distract from your subject. So when you're shooting your flower, or whatever you're shooting in nature, just be mindful of the background before you press the shutter. So it's not just composing and choosing your focal point on your subject itself. You have to think about the entire picture and what you want your background to look like. So those are some tips. Also, if it, like in this photo, with having more texture in the background and you want to eliminate it some, there are tricks that I use in editing that can make the bokeh more creamy. For example, in Lightroom, you can do a select subject mask and invert it to select only the background, and then you can bring down your texture and your clarity like a ton, and then that will blur your background a little bit. You can also play with the lens blur tool or go to Photoshop and do a select subject mask in Photoshop, and then blur the background with either the lens blur tool in the camera raw filter or the Gaussian blur. So there are ways that you can blur it in post-processing if you do have some distracting or textured bokeh that you would want to smooth out. So there are ways to deal with that. But I just thought I'd pop in here and share the way that I shoot to get creamy bokeh in camera, even when I'm shooting like f8, f10, f12. Yeah, that's my approach. I hope that helped, and thanks for watching. Bye.
Okay, now that we have our images loaded up in Lightroom, I'm going to share with you the results of the distance between our subject and the background. Again, we were shooting at an aperture of f8 in all of these situations. In this photo, which was one of the first that I took at the first part of the behind the scenes video, you can see that my background was way, way, way far in the distance, and we have a nice compression, nice creamy, not a lot of texture in the background, except for where the bokeh is shining through, the light is shining through the trees, and we have this beautiful bokeh up here at the top. You can zoom in. I was at ISO 800, I believe, and there's not very much noise in the background. We can definitely take care of the minimal color noise that's in there. Actually, I barely see it at all. When I zoomed in even further, you can see that it got even more compressed. The bokeh got larger. There's even more creamy bokeh in the background. And again, this is with our background way far in the distance. So when we went in the second part of the behind the scenes video and we went along the tree line, the bushes were like really close to the back of the flower. So we were way closer to the background. The ISO I bumped up to 1600 since we were more in the shade and there wasn't as much light where I was shooting, but we kept our aperture at f8, and you can see that that did affect the compression in our background. We have a lot more texture and noticeable patterns in the background. Still not very much noise, even though we increased the ISO to 1600. Just usually if you keep your image pretty well exposed, this is a little underexposed, but if we keep it really well exposed, we're not going to have a ton of noise, even if we do have to crank up our our ISO. And this amount of noise is definitely, we can take care of it in editing. I did zoom in here, and you can see that that did make more compression. And this is, we didn't move our flower away from the background, but we got closer to it. So that caused our depth of field to get more narrow. And so it blurred out a lot of the background while leaving, these areas in focus. So if I wanted the entire, you can see I have blur in this part of the flower now, and not all of the petals are in focus. So if I wanted all of these petals to be in focus, I would have to increase my aperture, or stop down my aperture rather, and increase the f-stop number. So like f12, f16, whatever I wanted to shoot at, just to get the entire flower in focus when shooting this close. But then again, we would be introducing a little bit more texture into the background because our depth of field would be a lot wider. So I'm going to edit these really quickly for you. I am going to, let's see. This is probably one of the flowers that I would edit for my feed, one of these two, but I'm going to do this one really quick. Higgy Hosh, my dogs it's early in the morning and they're deciding it's romp time. I'm going to apply my dawn preset. This is one that I absolutely love for golden hour photos, and we were shooting in evening golden hour. Okay, so we applied the preset, and the next thing I'm going to do is a select subject mask. I'm going to increase the whites a little bit, not much because we have some nice highlights up there. I'm actually going to bring down the highlights just a touch. I'm going to bring up the shadows just a little bit, and then I'm going to add some clarity and some texture. That just makes those water drops pop. I'm going to do another select subject mask, and I'm going to invert it, and then I'm actually going to bring down the texture, and this just adds a little bit more creaminess to the background. And if you did have any noise, that's a good way to get rid of it with minimal noise. If you have a lot of noise, you can use the denoise tool in Lightroom, which is great. I'm not going to do much more to this in Photoshop, in Lightroom, but I am going to copy these settings over to these photos really quick, because I'm going to show you how you can use Photoshop to get rid of some of that background texture and noise. Okay, so this is the one that we just started the edit. So I'm going to bring that into Photoshop, and then we're going to go to, let's see, which one of these do I like? Oop, it opened Photoshop. Okay, so this one is, okay, let's see. This one is a little bit brighter. We got a little bit of that bokeh up there. Actually, doesn't look like it's, no, it's in focus. It's just super bright. This one's good. I'm going to bring down the exposure a little bit on this one, though. I'm going to bring up the contrast. Again, remember that we weren't, we were right at the edge of the tree line, so we don't have a lot of pretty directional light like we do in this first one, but I'm going to show you how you can get rid of some of the background texture. Now, one thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the denoise tool. That's just because we were at a little bit higher ISO. It's not extremely noisy, but I'm just showing you if you did have a really noisy image, this is a great way to get rid of it. So you can see this is zoomed up super close, like way farther than 100%. So you can see this, you can bring up the amount of the denoise. So that did kind of sharpen it up a little and reduce some of the noise. So you can see even in, more in the background. So, oops. Come on. Okay, zoom out and let's zoom into this texture. Okay, so this is enhanced. This is without the enhancement, so you can see the noise when it's super, super zoomed in, and this is when it's enhanced with the denoise tool. So it really takes care of all that unnecessary noise. So it's just taking, you can see up here, it's creating a new DNG file, which is a raw file with using the denoise. And this is the one that we will continue to edit, just so that I can show you some ways to get, lessen that background texture, I suppose. Because sometimes you can't help how far the background is. If you're shooting something that's growing in nature, the background might be closer up, and you might just want to be creative in your editing to minimize that some. Sometimes, like when I'm shooting with grocery store flowers, like I did in the behind the scenes portion of this video, I have the ability to move around as much as I can. And sometimes when you're shooting in nature, you can choose a different angle just to have your background be a little further away or get rid of some of the distractions in the background. But sometimes we don't have that choice. So that's where editing comes in to make some magic happen. Okay, so this is our enhanced photo. So you can see it really took care of that noise. I'm going to go to my masks, and with the select subject mask where I already brought down some of that texture in the background, I'm actually going to bring it down all the way, and I'm going to bring the clarity down some. And you can see, we can still see some of that texture in the background, but it's much creamier and much smoother. So we have more implied compression. I'm going to open this in Photoshop. All right, are we open in there? Aha, okay, we are. Okay, so in Photoshop, if we wanted to, take this even further, we can use some Gaussian blur. The first thing I'm gonna do here, though, I'm gonna get rid of this leaf because I think it's distracting. So I just circled that with the lasso tool. I'm gonna hit generative fill, generate. Oop, sorry about that. And this just takes a few minutes, and if usually that you have a few to cycle through. That second one was pretty good. Okay, so one thing that I like to do, here I'm going to flatten that up. One thing that I like to do sometimes is when we have these dark spots, I use generative fill to kind of fill those in, just to make it less distracting. So, but first I'm going to actually bring the top of this image down. I want to crop this to 8 by 10, but if I cropped it to 8 by 10 right now, I would be cropping out the pretty bokeh, and I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna actually grab my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to hit Command C to copy it, Command V to paste it, Command T to transform it, and I'm gonna pull it down. Okay, so now I'm gonna add a layer mask to this little selection right here. So you just add a layer mask, and then I'm going to hit Command I to invert it. Actually, I'm not. Command I to invert it again. I'm going to grab a black brush, and I'm just going to brush off these areas. You can see that still lines up with this tree. I think I had a bokeh ball like right in here. Okay. Just make sure that the whole edge of your flower is, you can toggle on and off and make sure that we didn't affect any of the area of the flower. So I'm going to flatten that up, and then I'm going to crop it to 8 by 10. Okay, so now we kept our composition nice and didn't get rid of the bokeh that was naturally in the frame, which I really like. We do have, Higgy, I'm so sorry. We do have a lot of these dark spots that are still in the background. We're not going to get rid of all of them, but some of these I'm going to just use my lasso tool and do a generative fill. I wish this tool was a little faster. Okay, that one's not too bad. I'm going to do this in this corner too because it's a little distracting. Generative fill. And then right here, that didn't do a great job. Let's see. Let's see if circling a little bit more, because I actually want to get rid of that. Let's try that again. And if you ever generate it and it doesn't give you what you want, you can hit generate as many times as you want and it'll keep cycling through things. It may take a while, but eventually you'll probably get something that is workable, especially if you're just removing things from the background. I guess that's fine. Let's see. You know what? Sometimes if you flatten it, which I'm fine with because I usually do all of this before I do any of the rest of my edits in here. So you know, like colors or anything else. So I'm fine flattening things up once I get my composition the way that I want it and remove any distractions, and then go from there and leave my layers until the edit's done. This is being stubborn. That one's not too bad. This will be the last time that I try this spot. I'm just being finicky. I said it was the last time. Okay, we'll just leave that and pretend that it's gone. Okay, so I actually want to add a little bit here, or fill that in rather. So I'm going to generate here. Okay, let's see what the options are. That's not too bad. I think that one's probably the best. Let's see. Generate one more time. See, this is why it's good to try, if you can, to try to get the background the way that you want it and eliminate distractions in camera, because things are definitely fixable, but it's just more time consuming. Okay, I'm gonna just go with that one. Okay, I'm gonna use the remove tool to try to get rid of this. Okay, and now let's just try the remove tool to get rid of that. Okay, so at least now we have more of a uniform, you know, background here. And next I'm gonna hit Command J. I'm gonna select subject. So this selects all of this. I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to hit Command I to invert it. Then I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And I'm going to, obviously that's way too much. I'm going to do like 30 maybe. Okay, so I'm going to go back to I'm going to hit OK. Now, obviously, it blurred our whole stem, and it got some of the edges of this flower. So we're going to go back to our layer mask with a black brush. And you can also do like the select subject and refine it a little bit. That works too. I just think that usually the select subject is pretty intuitive. Let's see here. We just don't want any of that ghosting right there. It's fine. Okay, so now we want to try to tediously bring back the, it's not that tedious, but bring back the, take the blur off of the stem and the leaves of the flower. And I'm being really sloppy for the sake of time because I'm already taking way too much time on this edit. But I'm just wanting to show you how you can fix if you have like a background that you don't love. It is possible to fix it. It just takes a little bit more time than if you were to get it in camera. Okay, so this is obviously not perfect. I'm not going to like spend a crap ton of time like fixing it. Okay, so you can also, if you feel like there's too much blur, we can bring that down a little bit, but you can see that did, you know, cream up our background a little bit more. You guys are driving me crazy. My dogs, I don't know, they always lay around like cats and they never do anything. And then as soon as I need a quiet for just like a little bit, they decide that they want to be animals. They are animals. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to zoom out, and then I'm going to add my tone overlay. So I'm going to navigate to my tone overlays. Higgins, stop it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to my tone overlays. And I'm going to choose spring tone overlay, stretch it so it's the entire size of the photo, and then I'm going to choose soft light. I'm going to go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur with this selected and make it over 100 just to get rid of any texture that's in the overlay. And you can see that just gives us a nice spotlight effect on our photo, on our subject. I'm actually going to pull this up a little bit. Okay. So I think that looks nice. And now I'm going to add a light overlay, and I'm actually going to do another background layer and add a layer mask. And I'm going to select subject. Oop, I want to remove that. Remove that layer mask. I was ahead of myself. Let's get rid of this layer. Oh, come on. It's because it's selected. Okay, deselected. Remove that layer. Try that again. Command J to copy the background layer. Okay, so we copied the background layer. Now I'm going to hit select subject. Now I'm going to do a layer mask, and I'm going to hit Command I to invert it. And then I'm going to add my light overlay. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and then I'm going to navigate to my overlays that come with my Down to Earth collection. There we go. And I'm going to choose this golden hour one. I'm going to, actually, I'm going to pull it all the way up to the top. There we go. And I'm going to choose screen mode. Then Command T, I'm going to make it really big because I want to cover a lot of the dark spots in that background. Okay. Then I'm going to pull this layer mask here from that latest background copy, and I'm going to attach it to this light overlay. And then I'm just going to bring down the opacity of it a little bit, like 65%. Okay, and then I'm going to go back here and I'm going to use a black brush just to paint, a white brush, just to paint a little bit of that light on the edges of the petals, because you can see it left a little bit of a halo around there. So I want it to look natural. So I'm just going to paint that on to make those edges a little less hard. There we go. Okay, and now these greens I think need to warm up a little bit since we're using warm light and we had warm light in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a hue saturation layer. I'm going to, let's see, go to my, color picker, and I'm going to pull that down. Left is warming the color and right is cooling it. I'm going to hit Command I, and then with a white brush, or a larger white brush, I'm going to just brush that on to here because I don't want this golden light blossom area to be warmer than it is. I'm also going to reduce the saturation a little bit. Okay, actually I might use a selective color layer and go to my yellows and add some magenta. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so that's how I would edit this to kind of make the background a little less distracting. So I'm going to save that back to Lightroom. Let's go see where we're at. So, okay, so this is where we started. This is where we ended up. And you can see the background is a lot creamier, a lot more tame. The colors are a lot nicer. Still, I believe that the one that I will edit for my feed will be this one. It will be a lot quicker of an edit. I love the bokeh up here that's naturally in there. Yeah, I just think that this is the one that would fit my feed a little bit more. But I use the same preset. I would use the same process. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to wrap this video up. But I hope you enjoyed this discussion about Aperture and learning some ways to kind of fix some things if the distance of your background is a little bit out of your control. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye.